Before we talk about Pokemon Legends Arceus, I think it's only fair we look at the state of the franchise leading up to the game. It all began with Pokemon Red and Green back
Jeff, the series is 30 years old. We don't have time for this.
Fine, you're not getting my 30-minute rant on Pokemon channel then. So who's the loser now? The 3D era of Pokemon, at the very least, began in 2013 with Pokemon X and Y for the Nintendo 3DS. At the time, it was the expected progression to abandon the sprites that had been seen and improved upon throughout the Game Boy and DS eras. Generation 6 was sort of the growing pains generation for the franchise. It was received fine enough, because it's Pokemon for one, although it's debatably the most forgettable Pokemon generation, as X and Y wouldn't even receive a sequel game, which was unprecedented at the time. Pokemon Sun and Moon would release in 2016 to start the 7th generation, followed by Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon the next year. What is important to note though is that during the 3DS generations is the fact that the Pokemon team introduced a few, shall we say, changes that would continue to impact the series well into the Switch era, which is why I'm taking the time to even talk about these games. Trust me, we're going somewhere with this. We're not just rambling here. Who would do that in their video? Basically, instead of the team drawing the sprites like they did for the DS games, they would create a database of 3D Pokemon models that they would be able to transfer between not only the games inside of the generations, but future generations, including the Switch era. Pokemon is a yearly franchise after all, and it's a lot easier to change a sprite every year than it is to make brand new 3D models, so they had to cut some corners. Maybe the franchise shouldn't be yearly, huh? In a sense, it was their future-proof plan. Now that Pokemon games were coming out on top-of-the-line consoles, middle-of-the-line consoles, they needed to make this change in order to continue their yearly releases. There's an anime, there's merch, there's trading cards. It's like dominoes. If a game misses its deadline, the whole franchise falls apart. During this time period, however, fans began to notice that Game Freak's optimization skills for the Pokemon games were... yeah, sure, we can extend them some leeway since it was a 3DS after all. The 3 stood for how many pixels were on screen at one time. But it was a bit suspect in my opinion when you consider there were many 3DS games that weren't even RPGs that ran just a bit better. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like the Pokemon 3DS games are unplayable or anything, and 99% of the time the games ran fine. But at times, like when they introduced new features such as Pokemon Swarms or special animations, yeah, it didn't run that well, which is pretty embarrassing for a company of their budget. Well, at first you might just say it's because of the handheld. This unfortunately would turn out to be some rather dangerous foreshadowing, because if Game Freak couldn't get their games running 100% perfect on the goddamn 3DS, how the hell were they going to be able to adapt their games on the Switch? It can't be that bad though, right? Right? Oh god, please someone say something.